Hey, we're talking about how to deal with those people. Those people. And by those people, what I mean by that is people who are difficult. People who, no matter how hard you try to please them, can't be pleased. The type of people who just criticize you for absolutely everything. They try to control you, or they don't respect your boundaries. When I talk about those people, I'm talking about the people who suck the life out of you. They are emotional vampires that suck you dry every time you talk to them. Maybe it takes a couple of hours, 30 minutes, whatever, to recover after you talk to them. Often they can be demanding, disapproving, demeaning, or just plain destructive. That's what we're talking about as part of those people. Now, as we talk about this, essentially what we're talking about is toxic people. How do you deal with toxic people in your life? And I think sometimes we use the word toxic a little too much when we refer to people, and so we've got to be careful where we apply something like that. And so I'm trying to be very careful, because I think that's something you better not throw that out a lot. But there are some people who are toxic, and there was a theologian once who said, haters gonna hate, 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 hate. And what should we do as a result? Shake it off. Shake it off. I've never been a big fan of labeling people. I think it's demeaning. I think that can be toxic in and of itself, but sometimes it is necessary in order to understand, because there are situations in which you need to know this is not a me problem, this is a you problem. Oh man, you guys. Use guys. Yeah. Sometimes it's a you problem. It's not a me problem. And often, we've got to be careful, but often what happens is people can reflect that type of thing back on you. And so it's important sometimes to be able to say, hey, this just isn't a healthy situation or person, right? And here's why it's important, because sometimes good advice to the wrong situation can bring about more harm than good. Have you guys noticed how good I am at giving advice? Yes, thank you. Settle down. Yes, I am. I know. Do I need to threaten to resign again? But do you notice, but good advice in a bad situation can bring about not health, but just the opposite, right? If I could give you the best advice ever for how to have a happy and healthy marriage. But if I give that advice in one situation, it can bring about happy and healthy marriage. In another situation where maybe there's an abusive partner, that same advice could be the opposite of what's necessary. Okay, so sometimes it's just to recognize, hey, there's something that's broken here. Right? Because you can go to all the conferences you want and read all the marriage books that you want, but if you are married to an abusive, gaslighting husband, that's not going to help. And so you need to step back and recognize when this is not a me problem, this is a you problem, okay? So what I'm saying is and I'm saying either side, because both sides this can happen in. We can give advice into a situation and not recognize the depths of the toxicity that's in it. And so we need to step back and we need to pay attention a little bit more. And Jesus labeled people. And sometimes having a label or something to hold on to can give freedom in your life. When you recognize, wait, this isn't a me thing. This is a them thing. And so I recognize that. And Jesus did. He labeled Herod a fox, right? Which was not like Jimi Hendrix, foxy lady. It was like a nasty vermin that nobody wanted to deal with. And that's what Jesus called Herod. And then he called the Pharisees blind fools and hypocrites, and then blind guides. And he called them snakes. And sometimes, and I don't mean all the time, but you need to know this isn't a me problem, this is a you problem. Now, when we do a series like this, first off, it gets quiet. But second, it's important to recognize that we will hear exactly what we want to hear, and we will not hear what we don't want to hear. Right? So it's like, oh, yeah, I'm going to cherry pick that one piece that really I like that part, and I'm going to pay attention to that. And so as a result of that, that's really what led me to start where we're going to start. And today we're going to start with Travis the Troll. Let me introduce to you Travis the Troll. This is Travis the Troll. The reason why I am starting with Travis the Troll is that this is me. If I let my lowest inclinations lead, this is who I would be. I would be a troll. Now, do you know what I mean by a troll? Troll really began with as the internet age really began, the term trolling came along with that. And a troll is somebody who lives in the comment section of everything, right? And they post incendiary comments or questions and start battles where there doesn't need to be battles, right? But here's the thing, trolls don't just live on the internet. And I'm not going to just talk about social media, right? Like, let me handle the social media trolls for you right now. There's a really great button called block/ignore/snooze for 30 days. Use that button liberally, okay? Like, do not be afraid of that button. That button is for your good. Use the button, okay? But there are not just trolls on the internet. There are trolls everywhere. Now, to start with, I think we need to begin with, in order to understand what a troll is, we need to begin with where the term troll originally came from. See, when I think of a troll, I remember elementary school and the story that I was told somewhere along the line, maybe multiple times, of the Billy Goat's Gruff. You guys, anybody know Billy Goat's Gruff? Yeah. I don't think they tell those kind of stories anymore. Anybody under the age of 20 know the Billy Goat's Gruff? Okay, good. Good, I'm glad to hear it. Who needs geometry? Billy Goat's Gruff, that's what's important here. But the Billy Goat's Gruff is there's the baby goat, or the small goat that goes across the bridge, and underneath is a troll, and he's trying to get to the good green grass on the other side. And I don't remember exactly all the words, and it doesn't really matter. But the troll goes, "Hey, I'm going to eat you." And the goat says, "Don't eat me. My older brother is larger than me, much better meal." And so the troll says, "Okay, fine, I'll wait." And then along comes the second goat, a little bit bigger, or medium-sized, whatever. And the troll says, "Hey, I'm going to eat you." And that goat says, "Hey, don't eat me. My older brother is bigger than me, much better meal." And so then the troll says, "Yeah, I'll eat him instead." So then that goat goes by, and then the biggest goat comes along, and the troll says, "Hey, I'm going to eat you." And that goat says, "No, you won't," and beats up the troll, or something to that effect. Because the biggest goat is big enough to beat the troll, right? And that's where you think that the term troll comes from. It's not. The term trolling is actually a fishing term. It is throwing bait out and then dragging it through the water, either with a trolling motor and driving it along, or just reeling it in and waiting to see what fish bite. That's where the term actually comes from. It is someone who throws out bait, hoping someone will take a bite, and once you bite, they got you. Okay? So today, here's what we're going to do. We are going to go through the life cycle of a troll. Okay? Because how you handle a troll is largely contingent upon how big that troll is. Okay? How much of a troll are we talking about here? And so to begin with, I think it's important for you to hear about the birth of a troll. And for that, I think probably the birth of my troll. Here's how it began. When I was younger, I'm one of 6 kids, and I have 3 older sisters. I know. That's all you need to hear, right? But my sisters were great, fantastic. Never had a disagreement with them in my life. I'm just kidding. I love my brothers and sisters. But when I was a kid, I was not the model of humility and self-control that you see before you right now. And there were disagreements at times. And I remember the one time in my life, and it did only happen one time, at least at one time I remember, when I hit my sister. I know. This was the day I learned you do not hit your sister. Okay? I can picture it to this day. It was in the red house. It means nothing to you, but it means something to me. And I was in the hallway at the bottom of the stairs. I was on the first stair. She was on the third stair. I can picture it. And she said something. I don't remember what it was. But it upset me enough that I hauled off and punched her. Okay? And what do you think she did? Well, I mean, yeah, the crying thing, she deserved that. But She told mom and dad. So I punched her again. No, I'm just kidding. And oh, the retribution of my parents. The same spatula that was used to flip my pancakes. Smack my hindcakes. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was not good. And so I learned, you do not take out your aggression by hitting. So what did I do instead? I learned the things that antagonized her. And I would, in conversation, drop those things in. And then when she responded, I would tell mom and dad. And that is the birth of a troll. And to this day, this is still the lowest common denominator of my heart. This is the war within me. So I think it's a good place to start. Let's start with me. And so for today, let me share with you how to roll the troll. How to roll the troll. 1 Samuel chapter 25. 1 Samuel chapter 25, we're going to read the story of King David before he was a king. Anybody knows who King David is. Doesn't matter if you've been a part of a church or not. You know who King David is because he's the dude who beat Goliath, right? David versus Goliath, that's the David. He is one of the great heroes of the Bible, right? You find him more than maybe any other person in the Old Testament. You find the talk about David and his family. But where we're going to read today is not David as the hero. This is kind of a low moment in his life. There's many, but at this point, he's running from Saul because if you want to know a toxic person, King Saul was a toxic person, right? Like he had severe mental, emotional, spiritual problems. That's the way the Bible talks about him. And he had it in for David. David was the national hero, raised up, trained in military tactics, and as a result, leads military battles and wins. And as a result, Saul gets jealous and attacks David verbally and physically, like literally takes shots at him, throwing spears at David across the room, right? And trying to kill him. Okay? In fact, I think at this point, it's important to throw out a book, an excellent book, called A Tale of Three Kings. Anybody know the book A Tale of Three Kings? This book is fantastic. And to kind of just set that up, this is the book that when I was installed here as the pastor and Doug Clay came, our superintendent, he recommended, and he said he reads this book once a year. Okay, because there's some value in it in how to work with or answer unstable people, but I think its greatest impact is how to lead people and make sure that you are not an unstable person. Okay, it's super good for that reason. I will say this book is fantastic, Tale of Three Kings, Gene Edwards, but I think what is important to see in it is that the answer is not always to walk away right off the bat. Okay, because in David, God used Saul in his life, and God will use toxic people in your life to break you and make you. And so sometimes I think we hit the eject button a little too quick, and maybe we ought not. Now, at the same time, I'm not saying that there's not a time to leave. David left. In fact, he had to run for his life. And Saul tried to chase him down at one point while Saul's trying to hide him or hunt him. Right before the story we're going to read, actually, David's hiding in a cave, and Saul, as they're hunting party to try to get him, goes into the cave to use the restroom, and David has a chance to take his life and does not. And so then Saul goes out, David reveals, hey, I was in here, I could have killed you, and all that whole thing. That happens right before what we're about to read. But at this moment, then, one of David's heroes dies. Samuel dies. And probably David may not have even been able to go to his funeral. We're not entirely sure because he was running for his life. People begin to gather around David, and so at some point he ends up having like 600 men around him. So that's where we're going to pick up. 1 Samuel chapter 25, verse 1. Now Samuel died, and all Israel gathered for his funeral. They buried him at his house in Ramah. Then David moved down to the wilderness of Maon. So this is right in between Bethlehem and Hebron, right in the middle of Judah. Obviously, it's not like a rich area, but it's a safe area for David. Saul's further north in a more rich area. And so this is a good place for David to kind of feel safe. If there's a safe place for him, this is about as safe as it gets. So it's not like he's living a life of luxury, but things have stabilized at the very least. There was a wealthy man from Maon who owned property near the town of Carmel. He had 3,000 sheep and 1,000 goats, and it was sheep shearing time. This man's name was Nabal, and his wife, Abigail, was a sensible and beautiful woman. Come on, somebody. But Nabal, a descendant of Caleb, was crude and mean in all his dealings. So you know David's not going to be the hero of this story. The hero of this story is Abigail. And yet you get the setup of a guy who's not a very good guy. He's cruel. He's mean in all his dealings. As a result, he's rich. He's got 3,000 sheep, 1,000 goats, and it's the moment of his profits, right? This is the moment where he gets all that he has worked towards, and the people who work for him work towards. And in a moment like this, typically there was a big celebration. The reason why is to kind of share some of that profit, right? To those who've worked on it would benefit from it, right? Now there is something I think we ought to stop and pay attention to here, because there's a lot this story does not speak to, but there is some things it does. And I've never been the type of person to say, hey, we need to tear down patriarchal structures everywhere we find them. I've never said that, never will. But if you want to know a situation in which you see the corruption of, or the corrupt possibility of that type of a structure, you see it here. This guy, it says, is a descendant of Caleb, who is one of the other heroes of the Bible, right? A good man, a good leader. And yet this guy ain't it. But just because of the fact that he is a descendant, because of the way he's rich, he's got it, he's well off, and he does not treat people well at all, okay? And then you have Abigail, who is sensible and beautiful. The word sensible there means that, or gives the impression like this is somebody who thinks deeply about things, understands the way things actually works, and works within that type of a situation, right? Well, verse 4. When David heard that Nabal was shearing his sheep, he sent 10 of his young men to Carmel with this message for Nabal: peace and prosperity to you, your family, and everything you own. I am told that it is sheep shearing time. While your shepherds stayed among us near Carmel, we never harmed them, and nothing was ever stolen from them. Ask your own men, and they will tell you this is true. So would you be kind to us, since we have come at a time of celebration? Please share any provisions you might have on hand with us and with your friend David. David's got 600 mouths to feed. And later in the story, you find out that truly he protected these people. So this is not like a request that would be out of order, because truly at this point, 600 men. That's not including others that would have been along with them, but there are 600 men. David, by right of power, could have taken what he wanted, but he did not. And the right of power at that point would have been the thing that trumped all. He could have taken it all, but he does not. Instead, it says later in the story, you feel it out even more. He protected them, kept them safe so that no sheep went missing at all during the whole process. And so if people are going to benefit from this, those people who've helped, David says, hey, I should be one of those people. By right of hospitality, he should offer this. This is a time of profit for you, he says. Quid pro quo would say, I helped you, you helped me. Now, here's the thing about toxic people. Normal social cues do not work for them. Okay? It just doesn't. Normal social cues, norms do not work. So they deliver this message. Verse 9. David's young men gave this message to Nabal in David's name, and they waited for a reply. Okay? Normally when there's this kind of a message delivered, it doesn't talk about them waiting for a reply, which means that They delivered the message and waited for the reply. There is an awkward pause here as they are staring at him and he is staring at them. There's this awkward, long pause. They give the reply, or they give the message. They wait for him to say something. Here's what he says. "Who is this fellow David?" Nabal sneered to the young men. "Who does this son of Jesse think he is? There are lots of servants these days who run away from their masters. Should I take my bread and my water and my meat that I've slaughtered for my shearers and give it to a band of outlaws who come from who knows where?" Now, I'm not sure, but I think a simple no would have sufficed. That's not what Nabal gives. Instead, Nabal says, "Who is this fellow David?" Now remember, he is right near Bethlehem. He is in the middle of Judah, and David has been a national hero. He defeated Goliath. Everybody knows who David is. Nabal does not know who David is. In fact, right after this, what does he say? "Who does this son of Jesse?" Okay, he knows who David is. This is not a genuine question. He is, however, acting as if the name David means nothing. From the very beginning, this dude is trolling. And here's how you know. Because David's got the power and he doesn't. The thing about trolls is that trolls are trolls until they become the boss. Trolls become bullies when they become the boss. They start bullying others. But when David has the power in the situation, he still instead insults David and insists that he is just a servant who has run away from his master. When they have the power, they're bullies. When they don't, they're trolls. Do you think, though, because David sent 10 men to go ask Nabal this question, do you think, had David come himself with 600 men at his back, do you think Nabal would have said the same thing? "Who is David?" No. That's because here's one of the most important things you need to know about trolls, that trolls love to hide in dark places. And this is why the internet is so full of them, because you are granted anonymity. You can fire off comments or statements and just troll without any sort of consequence, because nobody even knows who you are. But let's say you have a troll at work or at school or at home or at a family gathering. Still, those comments will most likely come in the dark. They will be comments that while no one else is around, or it will still be done digitally if there's a digital format for you. It's snide comments or a comment with an emoji or whatever. But here's the thing about trolls. Trolls, it's so crazy, but they have the ability to say the very thing that gets to the core of those questions you may be asking about yourself. They say things that gets right under the skin and goes to your very soul. You know what I'm saying? The kind of comments that get to you when other comments wouldn't. What does he say to David? "Oh, servants running away from their masters." What a comment. And it gets to David's soul. Now remember, David had Saul chasing him and trying to kill him. Had a chance for retribution there. For revenge, he could have taken him out in a cave, but he doesn't. But then this guy says something to him, and look at his response. So David's young men returned and told him about what Nabal had said. "Get your swords," was David's reply as he strapped on his own. Then 400 men started off with David, and 200 remained behind to guard their equipment. Get your swords. I mean, he didn't kill Saul, but then this dude who means nothing gets to his very core. Why? Because something he said got to David, got into his very soul. And this is the thing about trolls. I don't know why they know how to do it, but they do. They can say the thing that gets to you. And this is a troll's bread and butter. They know how to bait the hook. And you know what the hook is? Anger. Anger is the hook. This guy deserves what's coming to him, right? We know that from the beginning of the story. Someone needs to give him what he deserves. And David's like, I'm that guy. I'm going to take care of this. And here's the thing. The prevailing wisdom on how to deal with a troll is this. Don't feed the trolls. Don't feed the trolls. And what I mean by that, and there's a limit to that, but let me say, here's how that would be true. Do not respond in anger to it. Because here's the thing about you and responding and giving what you might consider in a moment of anger to be just. All right? Here's the thing about it. You are not a good judge of that. You just aren't. We aren't. We are often really bad at it. In 2010, there was a rivalry between Auburn and Alabama. It's been going on for 100 years, right? And this rivalry's happening. In 2010, Auburn was finally doing better. They had Cam Newton as their quarterback, and they're winning finally, and Alabama's getting beaten. And so some fans from Auburn took Cam Newton's jersey and put it on Bear Bryant's statue. Bear Bryant's the legendary coach from Alabama. So they put this, and they took a picture on it and posted it on social media. So a guy named Harvey Updike decided he was going to get even. Here's a picture of Harvey Updike. Harvey Updike was a former Texas state trooper. He even has a little look of Texas Walker, walk the street, Texas Ranger, that whole, kind of the handlebar. Okay. Anyways, but this guy knows the law, all right? So keep that in mind. Former law enforcement officer at a high level decides he's going to get them back. So he buys a ton of herbicide and pours it into the ground around the famous 120-year-old oak trees at Toomer's Corner. These trees are famous. He pours it into the ground, and then he decides to call the radio show and tell them about what he did. And then the FBI got involved, and the Department of Homeland Security, because they were legitimately concerned with how much herbicide he poured into the ground, that it could get into the groundwater and it would actually poison Auburn. And so he was arrested and went to prison, and then he had to pay an $800,000 fine. A former law enforcement officer said, yeah, this is the equivalent of putting a jersey on a statue. We are not good at passing judgment, especially in anger. Anger can trigger a retaliation more severe than the provocation. This guy trolls David. So David says, get your swords, and straps his own on. I mean, he's going to not just do this guy away, but every male in his family and everybody else who's around. That is what the troll is looking for. He is looking for you to respond in such a way that does not match the provocation. Okay? So you are playing perfectly into their field when you do that. Someone's disrespectful of you. You know how it goes. You get personal in response, or they get personal and then maybe you got physical. You know all about this, how we retaliate in such a way that it's more than the actual provocation. And who always gets penalized? The person who retaliates. Who gets the 15-yard penalty? It's not the guy who made the comment. It's the guy who pushed after the comment. Or it's not the guy who pushed. It's the guy who hit after the push. It's always the person who responds who gets the penalty, right? Or in NASCAR. This is just, I totally feel this. How Denny Hamlin, at the end of March, he put Chastain deeply into the wall, like ran him right into the wall. Why did he do that? You guys have no idea, do you? Because last year, Chastain put multiple people out of the game, right? So as a result, he puts Chastain into the wall as retribution. What happens? He gets penalized. He was in first place in the points, and now he lost 25 points. See, you all deeply identify with that, right? Like, you got it. You got it. We got each other. You know me. I know you. or in the NBA. You know what's really a big deal right now? This is a big deal. Like, anybody NBA fans in here? What are they talking about right now? This very thing. Because of the fact that, like, apparently, especially as they get into the playoffs, there is a player on one team who is always, their whole goal is to antagonize the key or star player on the opposite team. Like, to the point of punching them in the groin until they react to it and get kicked out. This is the way that the game is played, right? You antagonize, and then the response is the thing that is penalized. So don't bite. It's what they're looking for. Don't give them what they want. Proverbs chapter 26, verse 4 says this very plainly. Don't answer the foolish arguments of fools, or you will become as foolish as they are. David's reaction here is far too much. It is far too much. This guy deserves something, but it is not for David to give. And this is playing into the field, the goal of the troll. Okay, so let's start in verse 14. Keep reading, see what happens next. Meanwhile, one of Nabal's servants went to Abigail and told her, David sent messengers from the wilderness to greet our master, but he screamed insults at them. Okay, so just giving a little bit more feel for what that moment was like. He screamed insults at them. These men have been very good to us, and we never suffered any harm from them. Nothing was stolen from us the whole time they were with us. In fact, day and night, they were like a wall of protection to us and the sheep. You need to know this and figure out what to do, for there is going to be trouble for our master and his whole family. He's so ill-tempered that no one can even talk to him. This is toxicity, and here's the thing about toxicity. Everybody knows it. They may not know it right off the bat, but they do learn. And why do they go to Abigail? Because everybody also knows character. Trolls can get into your brain by hitting you with that chink in the armor, but people know character and see it. You don't have to respond every time, because over time, people know who they can count on and who they can't. Now, I feel bad for poor Abigail that she's married to this guy. This is not a good situation. But somehow she knows how to operate within it, and she does. Here's what she does. Abigail wasted no time. She quickly gathered 200 loaves of bread, which she just had laying around, 2 wineskins full of wine, 5 sheep that had been slaughtered, nearly a bushel of roasted grain, 100 clusters of raisins, and 200 fig cakes. She packed them on donkeys and said to her servants, "Go on ahead, I will follow you shortly." But she didn't tell her husband Nabal what she was doing. That's a whole lot of food. So she ordered online, picked up at Walmart, and went, right? Where's this food coming from? They have a lot of it because they were ready to celebrate. This is the moment when he should be sharing the wealth, where those who have been a part of it should profit from it. And he's not going to let them. So anyway, and apparently they don't even miss it. She just takes it and goes. All right, here I'm going to read the rest of the story. So buckle up, Buttercup. I'm going to go fast. As she was riding her donkey into a mountain ravine, she saw David and his men coming toward her. David had just been saying, "A lot of good it did to help this fellow. We protected his flocks in the wilderness, and nothing he owned was lost or stolen. But he has repaid me evil for good. May God strike me and kill me if even one man of his house is still alive tomorrow morning." So now you know what he is coming to do. When Abigail saw David, she quickly got off her donkey and bowed low before him. She fell at his feet and said, "I accept all blame in this matter, my lord. Please listen to what I have to say. I know Nabal is a wicked and ill-tempered man. Please don't pay any attention to him. He is a fool, just as his name suggests. But I never even saw the young men you sent. Now, my lord, as surely as the Lord lives and you yourself live, since the Lord has kept you from murdering and taking vengeance into your own hands, let all your enemies and those who try to harm you be as cursed as Nabal is. And here is a present that I, your servant, have brought to you and your young men. Please forgive me if I have offended you in any way. The Lord will surely reward you with a lasting dynasty, for you are fighting the Lord's battles. And you have not done wrong throughout your entire life, even when you are chased by those who seek to kill you. Your life is safe in the care of the Lord your God, secure in his treasure pouch. But the lives of your enemies will disappear like stones shot from a sling. When the Lord has done all he promised and has made you leader of Israel, don't let this blemish be on your record. Don't let this be a blemish on your record. Then your conscience won't have to bear the staggering burden of needless bloodshed and vengeance. And when the Lord has done these great things for you, please remember me, your servant. David replied to Abigail, praise the Lord, the God of Israel, who has sent you to meet me today. Thank God for your good sense. Bless you for keeping me from murder and from carrying out vengeance with my own hands. For I swear by the Lord, the God of Israel, who has kept me from hurting you, that if you had not hurried out to meet me, not one of Nabal's men would still be alive tomorrow morning. Then David accepted her present and told her, return home in peace. I have heard what you said. We will not kill your husband. Wait, I didn't say don't do that. Sorry, keep going. I mean, all right. When Abigail arrived home, she found that Nabal was throwing a big party and was celebrating like a king. He was very drunk, so she didn't tell him anything about her meeting with David until dawn the next day. In the morning, when Nabal was sober, his wife told him what had happened, and as a result, he had a stroke, and he lay paralyzed on his bed like a stone. About 10 days later, the Lord struck him, and he died. So she goes, she meets with David, she heads off that anger. And it is possible to live at peace with a troll. And in fact here, I think Abigail shows something about her character and the way she has learned to live. Who knows? But there is a situation in which the answer to this may be very simple. And that is bait the troll back. Kill him with kindness. You want to kill a troll? Kill him with kindness. Like overload them with it. Here's how Proverbs 25, verse 21 and 22 says it. If your enemies are hungry, give them food to eat. If they are thirsty, give them water to drink, and you will heap burning coals of shame on their head, and the Lord will reward you. This is a proven tactic with trolls. Recognize that behind every troll is a soul. But when you kill them with kindness, it does work at a certain point. If it's a baby troll, that may be enough. Generously respond without taking the bait, and it will expose the shame for what it is. And if it's a baby troll, that troll will recognize it and may even apologize for it. Okay? But if that baby troll doesn't recognize it, those people around will. They will see the way you responded and the grace which you showed, and they will say of you, that is a beautiful and sensible person. Right? So bait the troll back. But sometimes that troll's a little bit more grown than just a baby troll. Sometimes it's an adolescent troll. And the thing about adolescent trolls is sometimes they don't respond the same way that a baby troll would. And in that instance, you need to take charge of the discourse. Right? You own it. Now, look at how Abigail handled herself in this. Did you hear the words she used? First, the language she uses to David. I mean, oh, hey, you are like someone held in God's treasure pouch. But others are like stone loosed by a sling. And he compares how he did not kill Saul. So apparently this is well known enough that Abigail speaks to it. She speaks to everything about David and who he is. She knows the very things to say to get to his core as well. But she does the opposite. Instead, she builds up and she speaks to. And then she says, hey, listen. When the time comes when you are in charge of this kingdom, you do not want this bloodshed on your soul. She speaks directly to it. Take charge of the discourse. But here's how you need to do that. If the troll is more, not just a baby troll, but doesn't respond just to positive kind of responses and blessing, here's what you can do. Set boundaries, but set them in person. It is a totally different thing to look somebody in the eyes and say to them, hey, that was inappropriate, than it is to do it digitally. Here's what I mean by that. Look at how Abigail, when she comes home, she finds Nabal drunk. She says, this is not the time to talk to him about the fact that I just gave away 200 loaves of bread and lots of raisins and some wine and some sheep. What does she do? She waits until the next morning when he has a little bit more of a clear head, right? She does not respond when he is in the middle of the drinking. She does it at the right time. And Abigail here you see speaking to the exact situation in the right time. Matthew 18 walks us through this, how we ought to do this sort of thing. When you have an issue with someone, you go to them. You look them in the eyes. It is so much easier to do it digitally. It is also so much less effective. A troll will not troll you as much while looking you in the eyes. It's much harder for that to happen. And if that's not enough, then what does it say to do? Then you bring someone along with you. There are meetings I have been in as the pastor of praise that I would not walk into alone. I brought somebody else with me because I wanted to make sure that I had a witness there too. But do you see what Abigail does and how she does it? She knows the right time and the right place in order to bring about the right result. But there is a time. There is a time when you might need to say something. And there are times when we take that advice of don't feed the troll, and we ignore the troll, and we allow the troll to grow when we ought not. That same passage I just read you, Proverbs chapter 26, verse 4. Don't answer the foolish arguments of fools, or you will become as foolish as they are. Verse 5. Be sure to answer the foolish arguments of fools, or they will become wiser in their own eyes. There is a time and a place for you to set boundaries and say that is inappropriate. But look the person in the eyes and establish, it is not okay for you to make comments about my weight. It's not. Please stop. And if you don't, I won't be able to respond to you that way anymore. Or we will need to make sure that there is a permanent record of every communication we have. Set boundaries. But do it eye to eye if it's possible. Always keep record. I take notes sometimes after a meeting. I have notes still in my office from some meetings I've had years ago. Why? Because it is important that there is a record of it. But do it in person. It's much harder for someone to look in the eye and troll you. It's much easier for them to do it digitally. But be prepared for the troll's response. You want to know what the most troll response is ever when you confront them and set boundaries? I'll tell you right now what it will be. In fact, this is one of the easiest ways to identify a troll. One of the most troll response you'll ever get is, it was just a joke. I was just being funny. You'll hear that from a troll over and over and over again. And the answer to that is, I didn't find it funny because it was funny at my expense. It was inappropriate. But that prevailing wisdom, don't feed the trolls, goes so far, and then it needs to stop. Because if you allow a troll to grow unchecked, then those behaviors which thrive in darkness continue to grow and grow and grow. And if you are in a position of leadership, and there is somebody under you who trolls people, that's on you. And you will undercut the team as a whole if you do not deal with it. You in leadership, those things you allow, you will replicate. And trolling should not be a consequence-free hobby. Now, on the flip side, you should never entrust yourself to a troll. If you see somebody who trolls others, they will troll you too, right? So keep your goals from the trolls. Ultimately, keep this in mind. Sooner or later, there will always be a big billy goat gruff. Trolls only hurt themselves in the end. Now, if you're in a closer relationship, trolling still needs to be called out as well. And arguments and baiting and all of those things need to be spoken directly to. Say, you are doing damage to our relationship. Trolling isn't just a simple roll your eyes thing. Because if left unchecked, that troll will grow into a fully grown troll. Let me tell you what a fully grown troll looks like. Sadism. Finding pleasure in others' pain. Narcissism. Selfish, self-centered, lacking in empathy, craving attention. Psychopathy. I would have said psychopathy, but I'm a doctor now. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just joking. Okay. Antisocial, lacking in empathy and remorse. Machiavellianism, deceptive, and manipulative. Those are not fun things. But that's where it goes. If you allow trolling to continue, that's where it leads to. These are toxic traits. And when you see it, the problem is not you, it is them. Okay? Let's just establish that. Because sometimes they'll try to flip it around on you, and you need to recognize it for what it is. So here's how you deal with a fully grown troll. Call in an airstrike from an AC-130. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know how that got in there. Say, well, bless their hearts. I don't. You have to set limits. And then there does come a time when you see that sort of thing where you may need to walk away. Now here's the rub. Every single one of us has a troll living under the bridge between our head and our heart. Every single one of us. Let's go back to those traits, the ones we just showed. You know what I see when I see that? I see Galatians chapter 5, where it talks about the sinful nature. That's what I see here. See, these things I see inside of me. One time, one of the best sermons I ever preached was about the fact that every single one of us has a troll with Cheeto fingers living in the basement of our heart. Every single one of us. These are the marks of the flesh nature inside of us. And Paul said in Galatians that these things are inside of us and that they make war against us. This is the flesh. There is no better illustration of the flesh than a troll. We all have a troll under the bridge between our head and your heart. And here's the thing about your flesh. It trolls you. And it is selfish. It lacks empathy. It's deceptive. And it finds pleasure in your and other pain. So don't leave that unchecked. Now, most important thing we can see in this whole story, because those things established and all of that, the most important thing we can see in this story is the beautiful and sensible Abigail. Because if you want a picture of Jesus Christ, it is her. Right? She goes in between. There is judgment coming. And she saves Nabal from himself. And then she saves David from himself. And how does she do it? By laying herself down in between them and saying, "Put this on me." This is Jesus Christ. You see it in Abigail. She is the perfect picture of Jesus Christ. And for you today, there is no hope for that. You know what I find absolutely nuts? And I hate to say this because this is a whole other sermon. But Ephesians 6:4. You know what it says to fathers? Don't troll your children. It says, do not, and my wife quotes this to me regularly. That's how I know it so well. It says, do not exasperate your children. Do not, it says, provoke your children to anger. Why in the world would Paul find it so necessary to speak to dads and say, don't be a troll to your kids? It's because it's inside of us, right? We know what makes our kids tick, right? We could get under the skin if we wanted to. And for whatever reason, he said, men, be on guard for this. Do not troll your children, is what he says there. Look it up. But why is that so important? Because it is in us. This whole thing is in us. And if you see it fully grown, man, you better beware, right? But if you see it in here, you better beware. And the only answer is Jesus Christ. And when we accept him as our Savior, he begins a work inside of us. First, he saves us, but then he delivers us from these kinds of things and turns the fruit of the flesh into the fruit of the Spirit. This is what he does. And this is the promise of Scripture. So yes, beware of the troll under the bridge, right? But beware of the troll under this bridge too. Beware of that one, because that's the one that will impact you most of all. The most difficult person you know is you. And so beware of that. But Jesus Christ, He came. He came in order to do away with that sort of thing. And He brought blessing. And He will save you from yourself.